What to do on this foggy morning in the 60-yard backyard. I'm betting it's a good time to shoot the crossbows. But before we shoot some arrows, we still got to decide which arrows we're going to shoot and which crossbow we're going to use. Now, the point of this is the dragon claws. Ooh, remember them? Here's all the dragon claws. I've gone through and spine indexed all of them that I have off the little machine here. Just saw that video. If you haven't seen it, I'll cut right to the chase. Basically, when you buy arrows like this, very nice arrows. These are dragon claws from Wyvern Creations. I really, really like these arrows. They really served me well. Perfect shots on 2 really nice bucks last year and a bear. So what more can you ask for, right? The SWAT X1 and I, the Enforcer, we only shoot big bucks and bears. That's all we shoot. So we're that kind of hunter setup. But anyway, in all seriousness, they really are a good arrow. They're just a rebranded Black Eagle Executioner is what they are technically. They're a Black Eagle Executioner. Black Eagle makes great stuff. Vanes, I always use those, got a lot of those. It's got a certain level of spine stiffness. It's good for crossbows. It seems to be pretty generally good and acceptable. And they'll work great out of any of the crossbows that we have. But Wyvern Creations does is they rebrand them. They put their own vanes on the shafts. They buy all the stuff, make the arrows, put in their inserts or whatever they're doing, you know, and they put different labels on them. Wyvern Creations, Dragon Claws, these are fun arrows to use, and I really had a good time with them. So shooting them out of the SWAT, work really good with the SWAT with these vanes on them. Now, I have a crossbow other than the SWAT that I can use for Crossbow Appreciation Month. No, I'm not talking about Bunjie. You saw in the last video, one of the last videos I uploaded was Bunjie back on the wall for the rest of Crossbow Appreciation Month. I'm sure he's still going to make an appearance here or there, but we're still going to have fun with more modern crossbows. Let's try and stay closer to that 400 feet per second range, right, with modern stuff. So here we got some Deathstalker arrows. Ooh, Deathstalker arrows. These Deathstalker arrows are really just rebranded Black Eagle Executioners, right? They're the same arrow. They just put their own label on it, says Deathstalker. But if you were to measure them, check the composition of them or whatever, they're the same thing as the Dragon Claws. Black Eagle makes great stuff, and other people incorporate that stuff in their own products. That's just how it is. Nothing wrong with that. These I was shooting out of the Scorpyd, right? Scorpyd Deathstalker, hence the name Deathstalker. And they are worn out good. Man, I shot a lot of these things. Now this guy, apparently there's an issue. Oh, that's got a helical on it. I re-fletched it with a helical vane, right? I did videos on that too. You really don't want helicals on fast stuff, on modern speeds, right? The helicals are for like the OB, for Bunjie, so for crossbows that are shooting 300 feet per second, 320 feet per second and slower. That's where you want those helicals to get those arrows are moving real slow, and they need those helicals to get caught up. So they start to right themselves and straighten themselves out faster. So they need more spin, right? That's what the helical does. On most of these that I've been shooting out of the Deathstalker, I had the snap-on nocks, of course, and the Deathstalker really does appreciate a snap-on knock, and they work really well out of that. These arrows shot pretty good. They really did. You start reaching out 60 yards, you start seeing a little bit of a difference, but that's probably just as much due to the fact that they aren't spine tested, right? They come off the press or whatever, you know, they get the arrow made, they make it, they put a label on it, and then they just put vanes on it. And those vanes are just where they are, right? The vanes are not necessarily lined up with the spine in any particular manner. You might be putting a spine up on one, spine sideways on the next one, spine to the left on the next one, spine down on the next one, and they're going to react differently coming off the rail. That's why they're different. These snap-on nocks will assure the best accuracy out of the Deathstalker. I don't like them. I don't like them one bit because they're not lighted. And they're not Burnt Coyote Luminox, but that's me. But I'm still going to take them all out, okay? And I'm going to just put the arrows back, take all the nocks out, and I'm going to use these little snap-on knock jobs on the Dragon Claws. This is what I was using on the Scorpyd. It is a Burnt Coyote Parker Luminox, ruby red Luminox. Really nice nocks. I really like these. They seem to work pretty good out of the Scorpyd, but I want to eliminate, in this test that I'm doing, any possibility that the knock is contributing to sloppy arrows downrange. We're going to be shooting a pretty good distance here at a pretty good clip, and I don't want to have any, come back and think, well, it's probably the nocks, I had the wrong nocks in there or something, and they weren't gripped on the string, because the Scorpyd's a finicky little guy. It really is. I call it the slick black Cadillac, but it's really more like a sports car. It's really something that needs all this extra attention and love and everything else. And, you know, when I went from the OB, from the original Bunjie, right, which was the complete opposite of that, it's the Ford 8N of crossbows. You're going from a crossbow that needs no love and attention whatsoever, suffers whatever abuse, and still performs, to a sports car that performs really well if you treat it like a sports car and you baby it and pamper it and everything else. The SWAT X1, incidentally, is not like a race car or anything. That thing's pretty solid. It doesn't require any tuning at all. You got to use the more modern strings and cables, the appropriate strings and cables with it. You have an older model like I did. But other than that, that thing, you know, you don't have that problem, right? You don't have a problem with that thing. But anyway, now we got our dragon claws, and I'm just going to randomly select dragon claws and put these nocks in here, and hopefully they're going to fit. They are. I'll kind of line them up. These kinds of nocks, they're going to snap on the string, and if it doesn't snap on the string, something's wrong, right? So we have to turn this and make sure you got it in a way, and you got to have a vein going down. Here's what you got to watch when you're loading it, right? This is a trick. This is where it gets tricky, and I've had problems with this before. This red vein is the odd vein. That's the cock vein, but it's no longer the cock vein. This is the cock vein, just because of this. So I'm going to go by the knock and this dot, not this. If I'm going to hunt with these, right, I probably am going to go through the trouble of stripping them and then refletching them and putting all the cock veins in the right place, lined up with the spine. I would do that. But for these purposes today, what I want to do, I'm actually going to shoot them with the cock vein down, every one of them, line the knock up that way first, shoot them all with the cock vein down, and record how those numbered arrows, they're all numbered. This is number 8, for example. I'm going to see how each of these performs according to its standard cock vein that was on there, right, and record how it's hitting, shoot all of them, and record how they hit. And then at 30 yards, 40 yards, something like that. And then I'm going to take the knock and rotate the knock to where the dot is and put the dot up, so I've got the vein closest to the opposite side of that down, and that I'll line it up with that, so I'm shooting it that way, and see if spine indexing makes a difference. I'm pretty sure it's got this one's got a bad vein. We won't use that guy. Set him aside, no problem. Pull out another dude. Then we got one dud with a broken vein, which I could fix. And put that on there. Ta-da. When I come back, that'll be all dried up, and we'll take it out and work it back into the rotation as appropriate. Dragon claw arrow, cheapo knock, snap-on variety, 150 grainer, and a total of 485.1 grains. They should all be in that mix. Looks like we've had some visitors in the 60-yard backyard overnight. Probably trying to get to my apple trees. Got these nice cages built around all these apple trees, so I think they're going to be okay. Just to give you a little look at what we got here, we ended up with four dragon claw arrows, where the spine, the stiffest part of the spine, pretty much lines up with a vein, okay, on each one of these, pretty much. Maybe not perfect, right? It's a little bit off there, but it's not in the middle. Like, it's not opposite this vein. It's more lined up with this vein, if that makes any sense. To show you the difference, if we look over here, here's 6 more, and I'm short a knock, but we'll figure that out. These 6 have the stiffest part of the spine is between 2 veins, so it's opposite the other vein. On 3 vein arrows, it's always going to be this way. It's pretty much, I mean, some of them are real close. Like, if we go back and look at this guy, it's kind of lined up with that vein, kind of not. But nonetheless, that's more like this vein than it is like the opposite vein, if that makes any sense. Like, this one is so obvious. It's right in the middle between those 2 veins, so that lines it up with the original cock vein. This one, same deal. It's kind of in between. So all of these are kind of in between. We got it all. We got the 60-yard backyard, the sun coming up, the fog, the smell of barbecued chicken from the fire department next door. Can't beat it. It's going to be a great day. Got a little bit of traffic in the background, but to make up for it, we got some great birds, and we've got the slick black Cadillac. What do you think of that? Haven't seen this guy in a while, huh? So we got this guy out here, and I'm still in the running to see if this is going to be the crossbow of the season. It has not gotten a lot of use. It has cobwebs literally on it that I need to get off of here. I need to clean this bad boy up. We need to shake off the dust. And the way to do that is to cock it a few times and shoot it, and throw some arrows down range and see what happens. This is just a wonderful crossbow. Really do enjoy this thing. Really do appreciate it. It was actually a gift from our friend of Bunjie. Can you believe that? We're going to put this thing to good use, put it through its paces. The slick black Cadillac returns. When it's all cocked up, it's not a very big crossbow, is it? My one gun thing. I'm kind of getting away from my one gun philosophy here. I had trouble when we were at that crossbow meet loading an arrow into an older SWAT. Still go the weight beam down.
Abused, it looks horrible.
Oh, that's right.
You're a SWAT shooter.
I know. How am I forgetting this though? This is, you want one gun here, Jim. You know what I'm saying?
But it's pretty much the same as your other gun.
My mind thinking that the cock vein goes down instead of up and all that stuff. The SWAT's a little different. Been shooting the OB so much in the backyard that cocking this with a sled cocker, right, instead of a rope cocker, it's a little bit different a product, a little bit different of a process. Because I'm not a big fan of having multiple crossbows. I am a one gun guy. So I kind of have to decide going into this upcoming set of Crossbow Seasons, what one gun am I going to use? In this case, if it's going to be the Scorpyd, right, the Scorpyd Deathstalker here, you're using this shooting rest with it. It's a different shooting rest because the design of that front stock and also the reverse limb, the recoil's a little different on these, and you don't want the same kind of shooting setup that you do with the other ones. Got a bubble level on this, just like the Bog Death Grip. This is a different one. I'll flash it on the screen. It is a Bog. The Scorpyd seems to like that better. Cocking's a little different. The arrows with those little clip-on nocks is a little different. Everything's a little different when you switch from one crossbow to another. So I really like to pick one and stick with it. So I'm going to get this done. If we're going to use this one this year, I'll stick with that. If not, I'm going back to the SWAT X1, and we'll see where we're at with that, and we stick with the SWAT X1. Does that kind of make sense? But it's one thing, every time I shoot these different crossbows and switch, I go through that same kind of, got to relearn that crossbow. Not good. Not good from a hunting standpoint. That looks pretty good. We'll turn on the Burris Oracle X. Battery is good. The battery appears to be full. Let's see how far away we are using a little range finder here on the Bluetooth remote. You're right on that. It's at 32 yards. Right in the mix of what I wanted, somewhere between 30 and 35. That'll test our accuracy. It'll show any discrepancies between two arrows. It should do a pretty good job of that. So, the other thing I don't like about this one is you can't walk away from it. You shouldn't. Don't breathe too deep. This is really just a replacement for nock tuning. You can shoot an arrow, rotate the nock, shoot it again, adjust your nock, rotate the arrow, the vein, rotate the vein, shoot it all three different ways and record it and see which one shoots the most consistent. You can do that. That's a lot of trips in the backyard, a lot of energy. The spine testing, the way I'm doing it without replacing the veins, if you spine test it and then replace the veins so that they're exactly where you want them in relationship to that little dot, then you're good, right? They're all going to be the same, especially you can make them. So I'm going to start with each one of them, shooting just the cock vein down the way it came from the factory, right? Adjust the nock accordingly. Got to look down that good and give it a good look-see. And then we're going to put that in there. Got to wait for that click. And we're ready to go on that one. But now I've got a bubble level on here, of course, too, that I use, that I glued on. Basically, they're just an Amazon little bubble level. I super glued it on there. We're going to use our remote and just find a spot. Now, these arrows are not going to shoot. They might be close, but they're not. This crossbow is not sighted in for these arrows. We're looking for consistency. These shots aren't going to be exciting. I don't have lighted nocks, but I'll take you down there after I make a whole bunch of shots, and I'll shoot all these arrows. Then I'm going to go down there and record what we did, write it all down, and I'll show you. And then we'll come back up here and turn the nocks so that they are opposite. So we're shooting the vein that is opposite the dot. And then we'll shoot them all again and record the difference and talk about what happened. Here goes shot number one. First round of arrows done, all of them downrange, all 11 arrows I think we got there, 10 or 11 arrows. But check this out, this Scorpyd Deathstalker, I gotta tell you, hasn't been shot in quite a while because the SWAT kind of took over all of my attention. I really love the SWAT X1. This one shoots like a dream today, from what I can tell here. I don't have lighted nocks, so it's hard to tell. But for mismatched arrows, you know, just shooting them out of the box, this would be you're shooting the arrows out of the box. It's put them down range pretty good, and the muscle memory came back pretty quick from all the shooting of it. At first I thought I was going to have trouble cocking it, because originally learning how to cock this crossbow was a challenge, moving to a sled cocker. I don't like the cranks, for those of you who might be new to Death by Bungie. I try to avoid that. Down the road, I know, cranks are in the future, but for the time being I have this really nice piece of equipment that is working just fine, and the scope tuned right in, pretty much to this arrow weight. They were shooting like bullseyes, so that's, other than the illuminated knock, these are the same weight of arrows. Remember, the Deathstalkers and these Dragon Claws are basically the same arrow, right? So if they got the same insert in them, 150 grain field points, the knock is really going to be the only difference. Maybe the veins, slight difference there. But it really is performing well. Seems to be like being out in the 60-yard backyard. I did get a pass-through on that target to where it hit the handcart, and I could hear it ring out when I shot. So let's go down there and check and see how these shots went, and we'll write it all down. Whew, sun's starting to come out now. We're only halfway done. Better hurry up. Got the handy dandy crossbow journal, and we're making our way down the 60-yard backyard to the targets. You can see a big old collection of arrows there, man. But this is what I'm talking about. Now, couple little things. Those are pretty good at 32 yards. They're not good, let's face it. They're all over the place. And I am duplicating holes, but I figured that was okay because I was off on the first shot, so it's okay to put another one there, because these arrows aren't going to shoot the same. We do have one that lost a knock on the bottom. It's a bullseye, a dead bullseye. I got more of those snapping knocks. I found them. So that knock is somewhere in the yard. We'll never find that. That will be here for the rest of time. I don't see it. This one actually poked through. It actually passed through the target. I'm going to write down the results of each of these in this crossbow journal. This is from friend of Bungie, Ron. Thank you very much. And I've been using it for a couple of years now, filling it right up with all kinds of good data so I can always look back if I need to. I'm going to write each of these down. The arrows are numbered so I can go through and I can track which number was which. Just so you know, my shooting is terrible. It's not just normally bad, like it's regular version of bad, but I have poison ivy, real bad. And got it on my face. This is the worst I ever had it. And I'm on steroids because of that. And it makes me real jumpy and jittery. That plus the coffee is probably the perfect storm. But it's the same Rich Wilson for each one of the shots, for every arrow. So it's going to come out in the wash on this many arrows, I'm thinking. I can analyze the data. We just got to take that into account and give it a reality check when we analyze the data. Out there and all that dragging that target around. I dragged it back in here in the basement. I can tell you without even adding these up that the difference is these ones, when I spine indexed them or knock tuned them, whatever you want to call this, when I got them all done and shot them, they are much more consistent, but none of them are hitting the bullseye. So you have to re-sight in for these arrows now that I've changed something. That's an important point. This is a good time to make that important point, and that is, every time you change one thing, you change something else down the line. You change your string, you got to re-sight in. You change your nocks, you got to re-sight in. You change your weight of your broadhead or field point, you got to re-sight in. You should be sighting in periodically, even if it's just a little reality check throughout the seasons anyway. So this isn't anything new. If I'm going to hunt with these arrows, I'll just sight in for these arrows, right? Now that they're not tuned using the appropriate vein. And I won't go by the color of the vein when I load the arrow. I'll go by where my dot is, line my knock up according to that. Another observation, some of these arrows, the spine is on the bottom. Some of these arrows, the spine is on the top, depending on the stiffest part is, depending on how the veins fell, remember? Some of them, they're not perfect, but they're all closer than they were to being spine aligned up and down, either way, okay? So taking that into account though, the spine indexed arrows are far more consistent across the board. They're all off on the target, don't worry about that, because they're off by the same amount. If I draw that back over in the scope, right, draw the scope back over, draw it back over, right, get the burris out there and play with those stupid little wrenches that are too small and you can't get them in the Allen wrenches, you know what I'm talking about? It just drives you nuts. That's the prednisone talking. But seriously, if you re-sight in for that, get the burris all dialed in for these arrows, they'll be much more consistent down the road than the factory vein, right? So that's the advantage. All 12 of them will be much more accurate. With the factory alignments though, looking at my notes, the factory alignments on these arrows, basically I was in the red ring, out of the red ring, out of the red ring, out of the red ring, a bullseye, a bullseye, a bullseye, in the red ring, bullseye, in the red ring. That's the different shots. So they're all sort of hovering around the bullseye or in the red ring. And I can tell you that some of the shots were And they're pretty much all to the left a little bit. So this really just proved what I kind of expected. If I reached out to 50 yards or 60 yards or 100 yards, it makes even more difference. Those groups will tighten up if you are spine indexing your arrows or nock tuning them. This just jump starts the nock tuning. I can tell you a couple other observations. Nock tuning only gives you the 3 options because that's where the veins are, right? And that's all this test did. Give me the 3 options. If you spine align the arrows and then fletch them, right? Like a spine aligned arrow that you buy is done. And this is why manufacturers don't typically do it, because it's very labor intensive. You've got to go run this through the machine, test it, find the spine, mark it, and then fletch it with the veins lined up for those arrows, right? For that spine. And then you want the spine up or spine down on every one of them, right? And on the SWAT, you want your cock vein up, and then on the Scorpyd, you want the cock vein down, and blah, blah, blah. So every crossbow is going to be a little bit different. There's a lot that goes into this. And then you got to take into account the nock and where you align that nock. That's the spine indexing from scratch, and that will give you consistency across the board with every arrow. That's the AJ's custom arrows, for example, that we're shooting out of the SWAT X1. Those are high-end, spine aligned. They're going to really, really be consistent. Those arrows are far more consistent than I can be, right, shooting in the backyard. These ones, this is more of a nock tuning experiment. It sort of jump starts the nock tuning, because not all of the spines are lined up perfectly with what I'm going to use as a cock vein, but they're a lot better, right? They're a lot closer. The other thing you got to do is make sure, like on this arrow, you got to remember that you're not necessarily loading every one of them with the cock vein down now. So some guys will take a marker and they'll write on here, this is now the cock vein or whatever, so you're looking for that. I have these marks, and I'm going to keep the nocks aligned, and I'll be able to do that, hopefully. I'm going to go through, and when I shoot these arrows, I will spine align them and do it. And if we're going to use these arrows, then we're going to sight in for these arrows. Well, this has been fun. Me and the slick black Cadillac in the 60-yard backyard. It's fun to get this crossbow out and shoot it again. And it's still dialed in, for the most part, shooting pretty good. Don't shoot in the backyard when you're on prednisone. The steroids and stuff. I'm all jittery, and I'm dropping stuff over the balcony and everything. It's just terrible. So I can't negate the fact, we can't discount the fact that my shooting is affected by that, and there's no question about it. I did my best to use the bubble level, and there's a level built into the Burris, of course, but I lined the 2 of them up, make sure they're good. I was taking my breath before every shot. I felt good on the shots, but I'm sure that affected my shooting somewhat. As you go into the morning, you realize that the overall consistency is greater with the spine indexed arrows. So if I sight in for those, I'll have much more consistent accuracy, right? A lot easier to attain that consistent accuracy that we want with spine indexed arrows. That helps you in the backyard. The other observation that I will point out is, if I'm going to hunt with this crossbow, or if you have a specific crossbow you're going to hunt with, you still have to have a tryout for the quiver, right? I do that every year. I have a little tryout in the backyard. I shoot a dozen arrows, shoot them 3 times or whatever, shoot for an hour or 2, and then take the 4 best performing arrows, document it all in my little journal, and then I take the 4 best performers, and those are my quiver arrows. And then after I kill a deer or lose an arrow, whatever, I rotate another one, the next one, into that rotation. Ones that shoot identically are the ones that make the quiver. The ones that don't shoot completely consistent with them don't make the quiver. So still, even after spine indexing or nock tuning in this case, whatever you want to call this little experiment, you're kind of still in that mix of picking the 4 that are going to be on your quiver. You know what I mean? Or 5 or whatever you got. You should have at least 4, I think. I hope you got something out of that. Until next time, all hail the slick black Cadillac, the 60-yard backyard, and all hail Bunjie.